what's the movie called? Super Pumped, which is like the first thing I thought of when I saw this was The Social Network. We talked about Michael Cera yesterday. And I found that these types of movies seem to be getting a lot of play right now. You know, biopics and things related to this. Remember, Wolf of Wall Street did really good. As culture shifts and as technology shifts, as your interests shift as a culture as a whole, the things you want to see highlighted in movies probably do as well when it comes to true stories. Like, nobody cares about how the dude who's running BP got to be the head of the board of BP because oil is...
kind of do. See, I would argue these are the kind of movies that I love to see. Movies that are about real life occurrences, but they're interesting. Hopefully, I mean, you can get some that are just like, oh, this is loosely based on something happened, something that might actually be
and they're all
loosely
true. They're very all.
Yeah,
they're all very
they take artistic and creative liberties.
Ford
which I
versus
understand.
Ferrari.
But I think there is a desire, especially with the advent of social media, to understand more about companies, especially ones that brands and companies that we see publicly and maybe interact with.
Yeah.
I think, I think of the way that Elon Musk is become sort of a cultural icon.
Who's going to play him in a movie?
Well, and like Tesla's best marketing tool. You know, I would love to see stories about Tesla. I mean, I think of the ones about Facebook, or one of my favorite movies of all time is Moneyball, which I don't know a ton about sports,
but sabermetrics are interesting.
Various men I have dated and I've pretended, but like I think that whole prospect of using sabermetrics to evaluate players is phenomenal. It is fascinating, and that movie was great. The other one, like The Big Short, was incredibly popular. I don't know that people would spend time researching the housing crash, but having the entryway of a movie that makes it seem interesting is a really fantastic way for people to develop interest.
And the other thing about this
is about Uber, right?
Yes. Okay. This movie, it's starring the article is about Joseph Gordon-Levitt, is the bad boy of tech in a new show called Super Pumped. So it's going to be a long form show from Showtime. Showtime is doing really, really well right now.
Did they make Pillbillies, or is that Hulu?
That was Hulu.
Or not Pillbillies. What is it called?
Are you talking about the one about the opioid?
Yeah,
that was Hulu.
Okay.
That was I forgot what the name. The one with Kevin Costner and that was
Pillbillies is the term the executive
hillbilly heroin.
Used. No.
Yep.
It has one word name.
No, I'm saying hillbilly heroin.
Yeah,
that's a
they've
term
had a lot of really derogatory language
for
like
the
opioid
epidemic. So it says Joseph Gordon-Levitt stars in the Showtime series Super Pumped. I thought super bad when I first read this. So I kind of got it goofy. It says, which tells the rise of Uber to success. The tech world is getting their moment in the spotlight. On Monday, January 10th, Showtime released the first teaser for the series Super Pumped, the battle for Uber. I almost feel like it doesn't need the battle for Uber in there. Yeah. They should have just called it Uber.
I also don't understand where the term Super Pumped came from. When you gave me the list of topics and it said Super Pumped, I was like, I don't like
because
any of those super bad movies.
They're pumping gas and electricity to the cars.
She's making that up.
That's your guess?
That's my guess.
Yesterday, she threw a guess on like what Demi Lovato's tattoo was, and then she said it as if
she presents with confidence.
She said it as 100% as if she did all the research and that it was true, and then when we get down there and she finds out she's right, she goes, oh, I was right.
Good, I love it. I'm going to say it's because what's my guess? The gas one is so good. Okay, let's see if they...
Okay, well, I don't know if
they tell you.
The show is titled Super Pump after the best-selling nonfiction
book.
Yep.
Right?
Same name from New York Times.
Why was the book called that?
Ooh, I don't know.
Down the rabbit hole we go. So it says the trailer shows Joseph Gordon-Levitt as so it stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Uma Thurman, Kyle Chandler. So Uma Thurman's awesome. Kyle Chandler's awesome too. If anybody here likes Friday Night Lights was a fantastic show.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, also 500 Days of Summer.
500 Days of Summer. Also The Walk. I'm like the only person who liked The Walk, about the guy who walked the wire between the World Trade Center.
He also did that one where he had to like saw off his arm, right?
Yep. And then he also did he was in Inception. He's
doing great.
He works with Nolan a lot, but he's very, very good.
Nolan, like him.
And he played Edward Snowden in the Ridley Scott. I think it was Ridley Scott who made that one. But he played Edward Snowden in that one, and the makeup they did was incredible because he actually did kind of look like him by the time the trailer came out.
Also, another movie in this category about something that really happened, but is dramatized for public consumption. I think that probably,
it's funny because you mentioned Musk. I'm like, whoever plays him is not going to be as charismatic as it's going to be. It's not going. They're not going to be actually. He's actually going to be hard to adapt because they'll have to be so over the because he's already so over the top in a very.
He's over the top in his lifestyle, but like in his presentation, he's pretty muted.
But that's a very difficult tone to capture. I don't know who the hell could do that.
Comb South Africa for their best actors.
You'll have to find.
The other part is the South African accent, which is amazing. Is I assume pretty difficult to imitate.
Are you sure? Because Trevor Noah does it too.
Like, he's from South Africa.
Yeah, but I just hate him as a person. But his early comedy skits were kind of good.
So
yeah, it's not him mimicking it if he actually has the accent.
Yeah.
No. I was about to say, well, like if you want to hire him and do like a different race swap, like that one movie we were talking about.
So progressive.
Yeah, very progressive. So yep. Like Anne Boleyn. So it says it's about the rise of Uber and and how its founder, the CEO Travis Kalanick, was knocked from the top. So it's like he got pushed out of the boardroom. It says the trailer shows Gordon-Levitt as Kalanick, who promises employees, contrary to what you might have read, I'm no monster. Like you can already tell that he's gonna be able to chew the scenery while doing this. Then there's Uma Thurman, who portrays Huffington Post co-founder Arianna Huffington. That's very interesting. It's Huffington who dubs Kalanick the notorious bad boy of tech, but it quickly becomes clear that having a reputation as a bad boy does not bode well for growing a business. As Chandler's character Bill Gurley puts it, the best thing about Travis is he's willing to run through walls to win. The worst thing about him is he thinks everything is a wall. So following the release of the intense trailer, and then it says the series is based on Mike Isaac's 2019 book of the same title, which documented Uber's journey from startup to a multi-billion-dollar company. And that's it's coming out pretty soon, to February 27th. The one thing about it is, from what the research I did, first of all, Showtime has a really good track record with stuff like this. Dexter is from Showtime, and Dexter New Blood, which I've been watching right now, is not the best thing I've ever seen, but definitely better than how the show ended. It's the network that released Ray Donovan, which I have a real soft spot for. Liev Schreiber. It's one of those few shows. Most of the shows I like have a decent amount of it's mostly drama, but there's comedy mixed in. There's absolutely no comedy in Ray Donovan. It's one of the most depressing shows you'll ever. If you ever saw The Americans, the one about
I know people who are addicted to The Americans.
Yeah, it's about the two Russian sleeper agents living in America. No, it's the most Russian thing you've ever seen, even though it takes place in America. It's dreary, it's blue, it's depressing. But one thing that's big right now is shows like Billions and Succession are very, very popular, and those are all kind of boardroom related dramas. Now those are fictional, but they're over dramatizations of what it's like to work for a gazillion-dollar company,
right?
And the backstabbing and the betrayal and all things that come with it. This seems like it's more focused on one character,
right? Yeah.
But in general, I think that there's a lot of room for something like this having a good following with shows like Succession's really popular.
Yeah,
like that was one of those shows where I keep getting recommended to it. Oh, it's also the network that does Yellow Jackets, which people are loving right now, about the cannibalistic women's soccer team,
right?
So like as far as like networks with track records go for streaming shows, I would say that they're up there. So there's a cause for a certain amount of positivity. Plus, I tend to find that with less famous people, they tend to do a lot less like cultural shift, meaning that they're not going to change characters, immutable characteristics. They're not going to make they're not going to change inherent facts about a person to fit a current age narrative because it's socially beneficial for them or ideologically beneficial for them, because they're
the accuracy of the story.
No, they'll do that all the time in things, but only on properties that they feel will net them the most gain, right? They're not looking to make minor impact. They're looking to make changes at a major level. So you retell the story of Anne Boleyn, but you change the race of an actual person, which makes no sense. And it's not like this wasn't done in the past going the other way too. It's always been something ideologically that we've done as a society, which we should strive to get away from and strive for as much accuracy as possible when it comes to telling these stories. You have to over dramatize some of it. Like it's really funny watching the things about how they made The Social Network. Like, how do you make a bunch of a den of nerds making an app. How do you make that interesting? And it's like him breaking computers. Like that's the only way you can really make nerds interesting.
Yeah.
But when it revolves around billions of dollars, obviously there's more room here for stuff like that.
Yeah, I think as a society right now, without getting too like newsy about it, but there is a desire to evaluate power and how people achieve it and how they lose it. I think given how much federal authority has come into play over the past 2 years, as well as the rights of major corporations, I think even if we don't talk about it, I think we are all curious about the rise and fall of those who are able to cultivate, hold, and then potentially be destroyed by things that they create, especially powerful things.
So I've been watching Dexter New Blood, which me and her are going to review later on. But there's this one character who's like a billionaire oil tycoon, and of course they've got the climate change people who are protesting him. Which what I've realized is I don't hate this stuff in movies. I hate the buzzwords. Like if it was just, oh, these climate change activists are out to get me, that's stupid sounding to me. But if they said, oh, these eco hippies are out to get me, somehow it's less offensive to both sides. He comes off like a douche, like they want him to, and it doesn't insert the buzzwords, which annoys people like me. In the past, they were vague with how they described these types of causes in the movie, like the Earth Liberation Front. We're here for the, and it's with anything. It's like instead of calling everything by a buzzword, generalize the terms more and you bring more people in, right? So if they can stay away from that type of thing in this, stay away from buzzword lingo, which wasn't being used in 20 whatever year this was, that's the problem, right? Like you can't make a biopic about something. What was it we were watching the other day and I complained about, when we saw The Kingsman, like the lady talks about her family in like it was World War I. So what year was World War I?
1960.
60. No,
I'm thinking
like 1914 or something like that. 14. Is that I don't know.
I think that's
about right. But she talks about her family having privilege. And I'm like, it immediately took me out of it. Like, you don't have to phrase it that way. It says, our family has been fortunate to have the things we have. That's all you have to say. But the minute you start using those buzzwords that make it sound like you're on the cover of a Daily Beast article, you're going to pull people out of whatever story you're trying to tell and into modern day.
I actually think it shows a lack of research and sort of creativity on
lack of creativity for sure.
I mean, I don't doubt that someone during that time period was talking about disparities in wealth or social status or power.
But they're talking like they're living in 2021.
But you need to go back and read the language and see which subtle ways it was more accurate. I also think it's important to study language just generally because the origins of a term and where it ends up can be completely different and can be telling to what sort of structure led it there. With this movie, I'm curious to see sort of how...
Did they talk? How did they interview Travis Kalanick and get insight into his speech patterns and like how he talks? Like if you're going to do a thing about Elon Musk, he talks in a very specific way. Right. So you have to be able to recreate that on screen. So you can't just talk like you're reading an article or a listicle.
There is a fair amount of testimony that's gone on surrounding Uber from what I understand. I mean, they did face, from what I know, a pretty serious sexual harassment lawsuit from a couple, I think, female programmers at Uber. Okay. I mean, their culture has been well documented by progressive journalists, I would say.
It's like Activision Blizzard in the video game industry, right?
But it makes me wonder what is going to come up in this crazy rise to power. And also, there was I cannot remember his name, but there's a playwright who adapted the grand jury testimony from Ferguson, Missouri, the police shooting there, and just staged it as a play. And he had to take, it was interesting because he had to take some I won't say liberties, but you can't stage an entire trial, so you decide what was going in. But the language was specifically from the grand jury testimony, and I would be curious to see what sort of public statements or specific quotes from not just the CEO but other representative Uber make it into this movie. Again, that blurring of reality versus the dramatization, like these things really occurred, is in some ways is the reality of what's going on with this Silicon Valley company that blew up more. Do you even need to embellish it? I'm sure you need to stage it and make the lights pretty and whatever else you do for movies, but what did he actually say? Like, are his own words enough? Choosing
what stories to tell in his life is what creates the drama, right? So he could have 1,000 interesting stories, but it's choosing what 5 to 7 end up in the movie that shape the narrative around the film, because it can't be the book word for word, otherwise it doesn't work. One of the hardest things people don't realize is that adapting anything to screen is one of the hardest things in the world. That's why movies have such a hard time. You know, when you look at these things, almost everything's adapted from a book now, but they very rarely capture the magic of what they just, because they're different mediums. They're not meant to be read and experienced the same way. So like when a character like this, who's a real person, or Arianna Huffington, who's arguably more famous, like that was the only name I recognized was Arianna Huffington. They're going to have their own way of talking in the real world that will then be filtered through a writer and then through a director who will choose. The writer will choose the words. The director will give the actor, instruction on how to say them. So that's already filtered through 3 more people before it ever gets to screen, and you've lost the authenticity a lot of times of what that real life person was. So we'll see how if they manage to pull it off. Kyle Chandler's a really good actor. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is a very good actor. So, and I think so it's got Ian Alda, very good. A couple of these others I don't know. It's got Rob Moreau. Rob Moreau's a very good actor. So there's a lot of names attached to this that I would be willing to sit through to watch. And as a show, not a movie, a limited series, it's got more time to tell the story. So I'd say the bigger worry would probably be whether it ends up being dragging on, because then you ask the question, how interesting is the life of a dude running a company? So
and are we tracking Uber from its origins in whoever's dorm room or wherever they started, or are we following sort of like a 6-month period of him, towards the end of a cycle with flashbacks to the beginning? Like there are a lot of really interesting ways to do things. It's the kind of thing I would definitely give a shot, but again, like I said at the very start of this, I'm drawn to things that are based in reality, and especially walking away a better understanding of something that really is impacting all of us. I mean, Uber gave way to the ride sharing. I would think of it as what gave way to a lot of ride sharing companies. Lyft.
Imagine all the cab companies hate watching this. Like, fuck this guy.
Well, and are they going to talk about all of the workers' rights stuff that Uber, as a company, just by existing, has made us talk about? Are they going to talk about
the gig economy?
Right. I don't know. It's deeply fascinating to me. Also, their expansion, they aren't just a ride app anymore. They also have Uber Eats. They also have all kinds of things that changed the way, and especially during the pandemic, became some people's, go-to way to get food delivered to their house.
Do we get to blame this guy for like the $47 surcharge that ends up on every Uber Eats order that makes your order cost $65?
Yeah, I never order Uber Eats because of that reason. Like, just knowing that I have to pay extra, absolutely not. I'd rather just order from a small business that had a delivery company.
It's always like it's like, have you ever seen that meme of like, it's like when you go the 2 for $6.99 Domino's deal, and it's like $6.99 total $32.59, and the guy's just like,
I like the ones that are like girls being like, I just Uber ordered myself a $10 Starbucks drink for an extra $20 because it's self-care.
Exactly. It's like going out and going to get your
I could have walked, but instead, no.
Self-care. Self-care is just another word for like, I'm taking a sick day.
Whatever, man. What you need to do.
Whatever you need to do. I don't know if you like Uber. Does a movie like that interest you at all? A movie about this guy?
Well, if you guys are familiar with Timcast IRL, we did have the guy who created Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe, and I love Mike Rowe. And I kind of like the concept of seeing like things behind the scene and how it started. Like I got really into like how things are made. So I found out like how ramen was originally a concept from China, but then they brought it to Japan, and the only reason why it's called ramen to this day, because in the Japanese language they don't have the letter L, so they mix up their R's and L's a lot. So it's because it came from the Chinese word ramen, and like instead of pronouncing it as la, they pronounce it ra. And if you want to get the original recipe of the original Chinese ramen, there is a place in like southern Japan where it's like basically they call it Chinese ramen, and you can find it to this day.
Is it true that the Chinese invented pasta?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
I had a kid's book. Do you guys know who Richard Scarry is? He did like this animated children's series where like it's like he's creator of Busy Town, and like they're animals who like they're the baker and they do whatever. But he did one about like the origin of pasta. I have it as like I can visualize it as like an animated movie, and it's like the funniest thing. I'll send you a clip to it, but that was like rice was supposed to be as they were like chopping it, and instead they just let it go too long, and that made noodles. I have no idea if that's
brilliant.
Real. I have no idea if that's real.
I think I would watch it, maybe if it's not boring, because I did watch a little bit how Facebook was invented.
Yeah. Did you see The Social Network, the movie? Yeah, that's like you said, that was an Andrew Garfield movie, right? He was in that movie. That's like one of those things, like how do you make a bunch of tech nerds creating boardrooms? Like now a movie about Zuckerberg would be fascinating because you could just turn him into an evil robot and it would be pretty accurate. But the origins of it are much more humble. So you have to be more, it has to be more character driven.
Well, and I think also they relied on like the eliteness of getting into an Ivy League college like Harvard, and
stories where where the average person can't get to.
It gave you this behind the scenes look and what are they like there.
The average person is never going to work at a big tech startup.
Right.
So that's fascinating. And that's very culturally relevant to the world we live in now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I think you might like it, Merritt. Like
I do. I like weird, quirky things. Like you can tell from my background. Like I like weird, quirky things sometimes.
Her brain is a very, very busy place, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.